would you even know that you have osteoarthritis would be X-ray. X-ray findings do not correlate with symptoms, okay? Welcome to the Physio Diaries podcast with your hosts, Dr. Melanie Ziaziris and
Dr. Alice Koshabatsky, where we talk about spicy healthcare topics, wellness, and life, all while traveling across the country.
All right. Welcome back to episode 11 of the Physio Diaries podcast. Woo! We made it to episode 11. Oh my God, I almost said 10. I can't keep track of the days or the episodes anymore. But what was it? 10%? I think you also told me this statistic. But 10% of podcasts don't make it past episode 10, and we are at 11. So, we are in this for the long haul, and we have very big plans for this podcast. But today is all about arthritis. Before you say ew, it's for old people and whatever misconceptions you have about arthritis, just listen up and check yourself, because we have a lot of information and knowledge today, and young people, all ages, need to know this information. So we're going to take a really deep dive into arthritis, what it is, how to prevent it, treatments, personal stories, other research. But first, let's chat.
Let's chat. I didn't have anything crazy going on this week, but I wanted to mention that I recently had to go to the doctor. And I went on the portal that, usually they'll be like, oh, your after visit summary is ready. And so I was like, oh, curious, what do they say in there? I logged onto this portal and I basically found a bunch of my old doctor's notes. I don't know if this is a more recent thing. Basically, you're able to read not only just what the instructions they have for you are, but also just their entire note, the subjective, objective, assessment, everything that they write about you.
Interesting.
It's only for places that use Epic. So it was just kind of funny because it was notes from years ago. I don't even remember some of these things or telling my provider these things. It was very interesting. And it made me think, can our patients see what we're writing about them?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. If you use Epic, they typically do. Because I think it was a recent development where they decided that, yes, this is part of the patient's medical record and that's their information about themselves and they should have access to all of it. But that just made me question, because at the job right now, I'm using Epic. And I think I need to ask my coworkers, can our patients read some of the stuff that we're saying? It's not like I'm writing anything bad, but it's just, I wouldn't necessarily freeze certain things the way that I do in my notes if I know that people are reading them. So I'm I need to do some digging and figure out if they can see it.
I'm pretty sure people who use Epic the patients can see into the chart if they have access to the system. But a lot of patients don't know that they are allowed access into the system.
Oh my God.
I had this one patient once and she's like, you wrote this one thing in your note. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? But yeah, I've definitely had patients say that they looked at the note and were like,
yeah,
I read this thing. And I was like, yeah, I said that.
Yeah, I did. It was on there. And it's true. How was your birthday?
It was good. It was pretty chill. I worked until, I was at work because I had notes and stuff to do. So I was at work until 7. I got home. David cooked for me. My boyfriend made me dinner. He cooked scallops. And it was really good.
Nice.
But yeah, I didn't do anything on the actual day because it was a Tuesday. And I just got home close to 8 and I have work the next day. So that's not really too fun.
Yeah.
But this weekend we went to Sunda. There's a Sunda in Tampa.
Really?
Yes.
That place is so good.
So
oh my gosh.
Freaking good.
The crispy fried rice and the Brussels sprouts are my favorite.
Oh, I haven't had that.
So
I love their pad thai and we got sushi.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
But it's so good. And they have one in Tampa. There's only 4 locations. And what are the odds? 2 are in Chicago, 1 in Tampa, and then the other's in Nashville.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
So went there and then went out a little bit. We ended up watching UFC fighting. And I can't do it. I don't know how people enjoy. Well, no, I can see why people enjoy it, but I just don't know how they do it. All I kept
thinking about. Did you watch
the
Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight?
Yes, I did.
That's on Friday?
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. Honestly, I was not gonna watch it. And then Hippo was like, okay, like let's watch it. You know, it's free, it's on Netflix. Of course, the website kept crashing
Oh my
because I
God,
don't know if
yeah.
Netflix has ever hosted something that big. At first, I was like, dang, like Mike Tyson was doing so good. But then after a few rounds, I was like, I kind of feel bad. Like he's literally my dad's age. Like I would never fight him like that, you know? And Jake Paul's like our age. He's like 27. I'm like,
Right.
honestly, I would have never fought an old man. Like, I just felt so bad for him. I'm like, leave him alone, like, or let him win.
The speed and reaction times were not there.
I know. And some people were saying that it's like rigged for money. And like, you
Yeah,
know,
for
Mike, like, if
sure.
you see videos of Mike Tyson training, like, he was doing so good. And like, he still has some of that like reaction and some of the defense. But obviously, like, he's twice his age. Like, what did you think was going to happen though? You know?
I mean, he did
But it was
good, but
entertaining to watch, honestly, not gonna lie.
yeah, no, that's fair. I get that. I just every time I watch stuff like that, I just think like concussion, neck pain, CTE, all the
Oh
things.
my
And I'm like, how do you
god.
just like getting punched in the face repeatedly? I just
Yeah, it is
ugh.
so like Muhammad Ali, he had Parkinson's, and I don't know if it was related, but it possibly could have been
You never
because you have
know.
that repetitive head trauma.
Yeah.
And then there was also the girls that were fighting. I don't know their names.
Oh
There's
my
2
gosh.
girls.
They were
The one that
so
had
aggressive.
is so
Holy
aggressive.
crap. I was like, they are doing more than these men. They were
They
so much more
are.
aggressive.
Yeah, way more entertaining, but that one girl, she was, like, headbutting her in, like, the eye, and that was, like, a
Uh-huh.
massive gash. I'm like, "Dang, these girls are feisty."
Yes. Ugh.
That was, like,
It
one of
makes me
the
a little
first.
queasy.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, "I can't look at that anymore." Like, I'm, like, covering her eyebrow up. I'm like, "I can't watch that."
Yeah, but that was pretty much it. This weekend, I've just been so delayed at doing things and just not on my like schedule and on my shit. Like, it's just been, I don't know, I feel very all over the place. But I like watch these like Instagram and TikTok reels of CEOs and entrepreneurs and their morning or their whole day routines. And I'm like, how do people get up at 5 a.m. and have every hour planned to the T and actually follow it? And I'm like, I can barely even get up at 8 or 9.
I mean, I don't think they necessarily do that every day. That's just, like, when they stick to it. Like, who
That's
knows?
fair.
I mean, you
That's
know,
fair. You
everyone
never
on social
know.
media is different than,
Right.
like, in real life. So
Yes. But yeah, that's it. Life's been kind of boring, I guess, but it's
that's
okay.
good. Sometimes boring
Yeah.
is good. I need like a chill, boring weekend, and I haven't had one in a while.
I don't know. I spiral when I get bored. But anyway,
Uh,
to arthritis.
Anyways, let's stay focused so we don't spiral. Guys, we have an exciting
Okay.
topic.
Honestly, though, like I could talk about this topic for so long, and there's so many things I wanted to include. And I was like, frick, we don't have time for this. We need to like pick and choose what we're gonna, say.
Yeah, we can make this a freaking series because we
Yeah.
deal with it all the time.
There's
So,
just so much people don't know also. Okay. Anyway, let us talk about arthritis. So there's different types of arthritis, first of all. So we kind of group the term arthritis, but then there's a bunch of things under it. So there's osteoarthritis, there's rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Gout is kind of bunched into it a little bit, but it really is its own thing. And then ankylosing spondylitis. But you can kind of categorize them further into just like degenerative and then autoimmune. So I think the biggest ones we hear just in general are osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. And the biggest difference is that osteoarthritis is that degenerative one. And that is what we're going to focus on today because that is like more common, more talked about, really applies to kind of everyone. And then rheumatoid arthritis is more of that autoimmune arthritis. So let's just talk about the difference then, real quick. So, osteoarthritis is more, like I said, the degeneration and inflammation in like weight bearing joints. So, that's why you see it a lot in like your thumb joint, like the first CMC joint, your knee, your hip, your shoulder, sometimes ankle. I mean, that definitely ankle toes, those weight bearing joints that take a lot of load. So, it's also kind of known as wear and tear, but that's not fully true. And a lot of health professionals and medical doctors will say that as well. But it is a loss of joint space. And what can happen is there's a hardening and breakdown of articular cartilage, which is around the joints and surrounding all of our joints, but depending on the severity, can affect the bones. So with osteoarthritis, there's actually 4 stages. You can just think of like 1 and 2 as like very mild. You probably don't even know you have arthritis. And then 3 and 4 is when you're really getting into that severe arthritic joint, like it's really painful, getting to bone breakdown, a lot of inflammation. But you have an inflammatory cascade that happens. So red blood cells, white blood cells, cytokines, all of the things come to that joint to help with recovery, but then that also brings swelling and pain. You can have bone spurs, also known as osteophytes, which can also contribute to pain and restriction of the joint. And I'll get more to risk factors later on. With rheumatoid arthritis, back to that autoimmune inflammation, when I was doing research, I found this one thing that said it forms these things called pannus. And I don't remember ever learning that word before, but pannus is pretty much like so we have certain proteins and our body attacks those proteins because they think it's foreign, and then it builds up and causes pain on the joint and whatnot. We're not going to get into that much detail with rheumatoid arthritis because there is so much that can be talked about. And then there is like a genetic component. So there's certain genes associated with it, like the HLA-DR4 and rheumatoid factor. So just quick, brief kind of difference between OA and RA. But we are focusing on that OA, so we're going to go back to that. So I'm going to give you a little bit of statistics. In the US, about 32 million people have osteoarthritis. And statistics, you can kind of give or take because we don't know if people are just not recording things and people just don't know. You kind of got to give or take with the numbers. And in terms of medical costs and just the industry, it has costed the US $136.8 billion. Okay.
Yeah.
Billion. That is like an insane amount. I mean, we can talk about medical costs and like how many different things cost and, things that contribute to that, but we won't get into that. In terms of prevalence across the world, when I was doing my research, I saw that the top 3 countries that have osteoarthritis were China, India, and the US. Obviously, China and India have a huge population, but the fact that the US is up there is also pretty telling. So I think that is interesting. And then the lowest prevalence, the lowest 3 were sub-Saharan Africa. So like Nigeria, Ethiopia, that kind of region, Pacific Islands, and South/Central America. But like I said, back to statistics, there's always some give or take with statistics because you don't know what's actually being recorded and how accurately things are being recorded.
I was also going to say, like, yeah, it also depends on the average age of people, like average death.
Oh, yes.
So
Life expectancy. Yeah.
Life expectancy. Yeah. Because arthritis typically develops as we get older. I think it's also becoming more common because we have a lot of drugs and medications that are prolonging our lives. And it's possible that our joints aren't meant to hold up as long as, our life expectancy has been. So in some of those countries where they don't have as much arthritis, it's also possible that's because they have a shorter lifespan too, which is like one of the factors. But we know that like there's so many things that probably impact those numbers too. But that is very interesting.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I want to get more into this research, but like I'll just go into a web hole.
Yeah.
Okay. But how would you even know that you have osteoarthritis? Would be x-ray. That's really the only way to for real know is through imaging. X-ray first kind of line, but imaging can tell you the stages and severity, but this is key takeaway here. X-ray findings do not correlate with symptoms, okay? So
absolutely not.
What you see on that X-ray does not mean you are going to have pain, stiffness, issues, and whatnot. A lot of times people come in, and I know you can relate to this, but they'll be like, oh, I got this on the X-ray. I have degenerative disc disease, degenerative, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. So I literally just say, okay. And then they're kind of like, okay, that's it. I can see that in their like expression and body language. But
Right.
it's interesting. And so many medical doctors also will point to x-ray findings as the end all be all for their pain and what they're feeling also. Or just like, oh, you should be feeling this. Oh,
Right. Even recently, like they don't always correlate with symptoms because I have a patient right now who has bilateral knee arthritis. And in x-rays, they found, okay, like it's more severe on the left side, even though her symptoms are way worse on the right side and the right knee has been bothering her way more. So she recently underwent a total knee replacement for the left side, even though the right one is bothering her more. So I'm like, why are we
that
looking
makes
more at
no sense.
x-rays and imaging findings when the patient is literally reporting to you that the right knee is bothering her more and it's the one that causes more problems in her day-to-day life? But insurance wants to see more like actual, less the like subjective information, more objective, like, okay, this knee has severe arthritis, so this is the one that we're going to do surgery on. But it's bullshit because like they need to listen to the patient and what they're experiencing versus like, okay, this knee is severe and this one is like moderate. I'm like, x-rays are pretty good at detecting it, but it doesn't even necessarily correlate to what the patient experiences. And as PTs too, this gives me the absolute ick when somebody tells me that they have bone on bone arthritis. And I know this is not coming from the patient. I think it's
Yeah.
probably coming from other providers. But if you were someone not in the medical field, imagine how terrifying that sounds. Like bone on bone. It sounds like they're like rubbing against each other. It's just like, ooh, like sends
Yeah.
like shivers down my spine. I'm like, that sounds horrible.
And then they
Ugh,
use that as an excuse to not move. That's
exactly.
the worst part is they think this means like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this and I shouldn't be doing that. But like, that's actually the opposite. You should be.
Hmm. Right.
Ugh.
We know, like Wolf's Law, the only way that our tissues get stronger is by putting force through it. Like our bones, like they need force through the tissues. If you're just sitting, not doing anything all day, everything's going to get weak, your muscles and your bones. But when you hear bone on bone, it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't do anything. Like I'm injured and I can't change anything about that. It sounds like it's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, the cartilage is completely gone and now the bones are rubbing against each other,
Right.
which is not true, you know?
Not always true.
No.
It needs to be like super severely progressed to be like actually bone on bone. That is way at the end of the stages. Like,
Ugh,
that is
the
it.
amount we hear that, I hear that on a day-to-day basis. I'm like, please stop using that language because it
Yeah.
just sounds really scary for patients. Like
Yes.
it would
Big
sound scary to me.
psychological component then too.
Yes, exactly.
Ugh.
But anyways, how do we prevent this shit, Mel? Please tell
Okay.
us.
So, wait. I'll go back to the risk factors because
Oh, yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
makes the preventions makes more sense because obviously there's certain risk factors we can prevent, others we can't. So, according to our risk factors for getting osteoarthritis, the biggest one obviously age. After age 40, it increases your risk a lot, especially 65 up. And postmenopausal also shows some changes. Genetics can be a factor, going back to those kind of different types of arthritis too. Trauma to the area. So, like, let's say you've had multiple car accidents, injured that knee multiple times, that increases risk of getting arthritis in that knee. Weight and obesity. And I really wanted to do more research on this, but there's just too many things we had to cover today. But fat tissue and arthritis are very much correlated, and there's a lot more research out there on that. So feel free to do your own research, and we'll kind of touch on it a bit later. Having other chronic conditions, obviously, if you have, right, like heart disease, diabetes, all of these things, that's going to affect your ability for tissue healing, the body to heal itself and work to its maximum capacity. And you have other things just affecting your body, and they're going to affect your joints and tissues. Overuse. So let's say, like, classic example, marathon runners, constant kind of wear and tear per se. You're constantly using your feet, knees, ankles
Yes.
repeatedly for however many years you're doing it for. And last but not least, of course, females. We always get the risk factors. I swear we
Why?
always do.
Not fair. We get it all.
Yeah. I would love to see also, because female, obviously, estrogen levels and hormone levels, I would love to see more research on that, but that is a topic for another day.
Yes.
But back to prevention. So, obviously, we can't really affect genetics. We can't really do too much about our age. We can't do too much about being a female, like born a female and our biological makeup, but we can affect and prevent overuse, our weight, other chronic conditions. The most research in terms of prevention for osteoarthritis is on exercise, diet, and inflammation in the body. Going back to the weight loss, like I said, fat tissue can increase risk of osteoarthritis. And just having like obesity and increased weight and just fat tissue instead of muscle mass can contribute to the inflammation in the body and around that joint. Strength and resistance training, all of the research, it can actually help slow down the progression. Not necessarily, right? Like if you have it, but if you're, let's say, at stage one, you might have a little bit of articular cartilage changes, but it's not like you're not feeling pain. You can actually slow that process down by strength training and building and the muscles around the joint so
Yeah.
you have support in that joint.
That's a big thing that a lot of people with arthritis will ask when they come into PT. They're like, I just don't understand. Like, we're not going
Yeah.
to rebuild the cartilage. And I always tell them, like, we cannot possibly rebuild the cartilage. Maybe one day with future research, like certain injections can. But we with therapy are not going to rebuild your cartilage, but you still have some cartilage left in your knee. Let's strengthen all the muscles around the joint, have better support for the joint so less forces go through the knee, and we can slow down the progression of the arthritis and hopefully delay you having to get other treatments. So it's a lot of like education too, because people don't know this information. Like
Yeah.
to us, this is kind of like second nature, but the general public has no idea. So
The
we're
amount of
spreading the awareness.
people that blow off PT because they're like, oh, you can't change the arthritis. Okay, but I bet you're weak. Like, I know you are weak. That's what we are working
Exactly.
on. You're weak and you have arthritis and inflammation, and that is all cycling and contributing to your pain. So we can address multiple things.
Yes. And I'm like, regardless, you're going to have to do PT. Like, if you're going to get a knee replacement, you're still going to have to do physical therapy. So, why
Right.
not work hard now, make it easier for you later on? And then once you kind of reframe it in that way, they're like, oh, okay, I see. Like, this is why I need to do it. Otherwise, if their doctor's just sending them to PT, they're like, this is pointless. Like, I'm just going to put more force through my joints. Is not going to make it worse. So, a lot of like the first couple sessions is just like reframing their mind and realizing why it's actually going to help them. So you kind of have to get
Totally.
the buy-in before anything else. And that's with like most conditions.
Yeah, for sure. But I actually have a patient right now. They're so funny. But they had really, really bad just shoulder pain. Okay. Like arthritis, impingement, little tears, like pretty much everything you can think of that can go wrong is going wrong. Right. And this patient was very willing to try PT and all of that. But they're kind of like, I don't know, like how this can help me. And I tried to explain a lot of education on like the pain is coming from having literally no stability in that joint. Like your muscles don't know how to move correctly. They don't know how to do certain motions. They're weak, so they don't have enough force to generate to be able to move this joint in the proper way. And now they were able to do full open books with like no pain and
That's
reach up
amazing.
and all of that. And they were literally like, my husband is like shocked at how much I can move my arm. Honestly, I'm shocked at how much I can move my arm and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah,
Sometimes I get shocked at like how much people improve.
yes,
Like
yes.
sometimes it surprises me. I'm like, whoa, like I did that. Like we did that together. Sometimes I almost like I step back and I'm like, holy shit. Like, did you really just like lift your arm? Like you weren't able to do that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to like contain my excitement because I'm like, I want to show that, like, I believe in myself and I believe in what we do and what we study. But sometimes when patients improve so drastically, you're like, dang, like, even I didn't expect that.
Yeah. A little ego boost.
Yes, like, hell yeah, PT, we're PT.
Okay, but back to prevention. We're going to go off topic a lot during this episode.
We're probably going to have a lot of like side stories here because this is like patients that we see on the daily multiple times a day.
Okay. So there's this doctor. His name is Dr. James Machino. Not really sure how it's pronounced exactly, but he's also a nutritionist. I watched like this YouTube video and looked at some of his stuff. He was saying that you can prevent osteoarthritis through supplements, which we'll also talk a lot about later, but specifically glucosamine. After age 40, we have less glucosamine and it's needed for joint cartilage formation. So it just helps with cartilage specifically. And he suggested taking glucosamine supplementation. A lot of times people will get chondroitin, but he says it is useless because our bodies can't absorb it. So glucosamine, natural anti-inflammatories. Hence, he did not say ibuprofen or Tylenol. And so some natural anti-inflammatories would be through diet and food, right? Like not eating processed foods, eating whole foods in their full form, not like your protein bar, cereal, and TV dinners, right? Like whole foods. An anti-inflammatory diet. A lot of times people say like the Mediterranean diet is anti-inflammatory, but it's just eating a balanced diet, right? Getting like all of your macros, your good fats, complex carbs, protein, your fiber, fruits, vegetables, 5 colors a day keeps the doctors away, saying I love all of that. Then he also suggested chiropractic work, but his main, and I didn't really fully agree with this because yes, chiropractic, but also exercise. But his main point to that was that we're keeping that joint moving and loosening it up and all that, right? So like all therapies can do that, PT, OT, chiropractic. So I'm going to just group those all together. But yeah. And so there was actually a study that I found that said exercise and moderate physical activity can help promote the extracellular matrix around the joint and repair it and reduce degenerative changes. So, like going back to slowing down the process of arthritis building up and getting more severe. There was actually a study by UCSF, so I'm assuming San Francisco, looking at different activity levels and how that paired with NEOA. So it was really interesting, actually. Low and high physical activity in middle-aged adults for NEOA actually accelerated cartilage breakdown, so kind of contributed in a way to arthritis, but moderate activity helped to reduce cartilage loss. Finding that balance of moderate physical activity, going back to that overuse, that is going to help contribute, but like not getting enough physical activity is also going to contribute. So you have to be somewhere in the middle. So
right. I was going to say, I would probably assume that like high intensity too would also be more high impact stuff, right, like running, sprints, like more plyometric stuff. I wouldn't probably recommend to somebody that is older. So like moderate intensity and like that middle heart rate range, maybe choosing like something lower impact, like walking on a treadmill, but at an incline, or like using a elliptical versus like doing something more intense, like running or like even the Stairmaster to kind of reduce the impact on the knees or like the hips or the joints. And that's probably what they mean by like higher intensity exercise is my guess too. And like repetitive stress. They say like you want to vary the type of exercise you do, not even just for like arthritis, but just all people in general. Because if you're repetitively stressing the same tissues in the same exact way, our bodies weren't made to do that. They're made for like a variety of activities and things. So for example, if you just play basketball, like you should also incorporate some other sports or like other things into your routine rather than just consistently doing like that one activity. And same would go for arthritis. Like you want to vary the type of activities that you do.
Yeah.
I was also going to say, funny little side story. In Hawaii, this guy was coming in for what did I think it was? It was post-herpetic neuralgia. So he had, what is it called? Like when you have the dermatomal pattern, is it like herpes zoster? Or it's shingles. It's shingles. And so he had shingles a couple months before that. And then sometimes people develop like really bad neuralgia. It's actually like more common because I was talking to my mom about it. And he just had like this excruciating pain. And the doctor thought it was like the lateral femoral
Oh, femoral
cutaneous nerve.
cutaneous. Mm,
Yeah. And I was like, that would have only been sensory, but he was having like
yeah.
muscle weakness too, which is like
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
But anyways, great guy, but he was just like not doing well with physical therapy. And that's when I was like, okay, we need to refer you.
Yeah.
But anyways, before all of that kind of started to get worse, I was telling him about like diet and the point of diet as well as like exercise. And we were talking about like anti-inflammatory foods because one of my coworkers had like suggested this website that like talked a lot about like anti-inflammatory stuff that you could
Okay.
incorporate in
Yeah.
your diet.
Love
And the
it.
patient goes like, so what do you mean? Like, what should I be eating? And I was like, off the top of my head, like I know cinnamon is really good and
Yes.
anti-inflammatory. And the patient goes, oh, okay. So you're telling me that after today's session, you want me to go and like slam a pack of cinnamon rolls? Like I can do that. And I'm like, I love you, but no.
Cinnamon
Like
rolls.
cinnamon roll, that is, I was like, that is not the avenue that I would
No.
take. Because all of that sugar and fat is
The
going to
amount,
cancel
yeah,
out the
the amount of
benefits.
added sugar, that is straight inflammation into your body
I'm
right
like,
there.
I like the way that you're thinking, but like, let's go away from the highly processed foods. But it's just so funny. Like he was just like a very like dry, sarcastic guy. And I knew he was gonna say
Yeah.
something sassy. And he's like, all right, fine. Like I'll go slam a pack of cinnamon rolls after this.
That's
Like
so
bet.
funny.
You want me to have cinnamon?
Not
I'll
only
have my
that.
cinnamon.
Like literally whole ground cinnamon.
Right. Exactly. Like make a tea or like, whatever. Don't do the cinnamon
Yeah.
challenge, but like, put
No.
it into something, sprinkle it into your oatmeal. But,
Coffee, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, it was the funniest thing. I'm like,
That is so
no,
funny.
not what I was thinking.
But yeah, actually going back to that just reminded me because added sugar, high sugar, saturated fats are super inflammatory and are very big in processed foods. And going back to like the weight loss and fat tissue, obesity, and arthritis, like that all contributes. So, like, looking at your sugar intake is huge with inflammation in your body. Like, even reducing, oh my God, I saw this one like nutritionist that worked with someone to reduce added sugar intake. And on average, they were having like 100 and something grams of added sugar a day, which added sugar is all in processed things that have labels, right? So, like, that's a lot of added sugar. And they got it down to like 33. And that like made a huge difference. And just even looking at nutrition labels can do so much for your health. But yeah, anyway, that's my a little TED talk
2
on
cents. Yeah.
sugar. Yeah. Okay, back to I had one more thing I really wanted to say about prevention. Okay, it is kind of prevention, but also kind of management at the same time. With pain modulation, just trying to reduce pain levels in our bodies, whether you do have arthritis or not, just in general pain, we have this mechanism that happens when we exercise at a certain heart rate. A heart rate usually has to be around 70% of your max heart rate. You could do a quick calculation of like 220 minus your age, and then that number times 0.7, and then you'll get like 70% heart rate max. That isn't the most accurate, but good enough, good range and target number. But if you have any like heart conditions and whatnot, it'll probably be a little different. So look into that. But if you exercise for a good amount of time, when I say good amount, I pretty much mean like anything 8 minutes or more, you have these opioids that are naturally derived in our brains that are released and help with pain modulation and decreasing pain. So, although you may have pain, you still want to exercise. You can do a low impact, like walking, cycling, whatever, low impact on the joints, but getting that heart rate up and exercising to 70, at least around 70% of your heart rate max can help with pain in your body because it releases those naturally derived opioids in our brains.
Mm-hmm. That is amazing. That's why a lot of our patients, we have them do a warm up, and it's not only to kind of like lubricate the joints before they start to work, like before they exercise for an hour. It's also because of this, because literally moving and getting your heart rate going releases these feel good chemicals.
Yeah.
And hopefully, like if people realize this, then they can start exercising more and not relying as much on pain medication like oxyhydrocodone. Like so many people in this country are hooked. Like
even
especially
Tylenol and ibuprofen, like
yes, I'm like, you should not be taking those on a day-to-day basis. Like
Yeah,
that
like
should
your
just
liver
be
and stomach
as needed.
need a break.
Yes, exactly. But honestly, so many people in Wisconsin are so reliant on opioids more than in Washington.
Oh,
And it's
really?
so interesting to
Interesting.
see. Yeah, like
Hmm.
I have so many people that are like hooked on it and they've been taking it for years, but their bodies are so reliant on the medication that it's like they can't stop taking it because that level of their threshold for pain is so much lower over time, which is so interesting. So like if they knew this, then maybe they would like start exercising and getting their heart rate up and maybe rely a little bit less on those pain medications. So
Mm-hmm.
I know we've come a long way since like the opioid crisis, but like it's still bad. And we want to combat that as PTs and just educate people as much as we can.
For
But
sure.
it is what it is.
Okay, let's talk about treatments now because there's really only a couple ways to actually treat our osteoarthritis.
A lot of people know about joint replacements. And to most people, that's all they know. They think that once the arthritis gets so severe, they're like, okay, all I'm going to have to do is just get a knee replacement. A lot of people think that that's just the way life goes, that you're going to get old, you're going to start to have like knee, hip pain, shoulder pain, and then they're just going to do a joint replacement. But that isn't and that shouldn't be the case for everybody. It's only those
Nope.
people that absolutely need it.
Yeah.
But what a
Like
joint
last
replacement,
resort.
yes, last resort, like you've tried all the other options, then I would say, okay, fine, like maybe you need a replacement. But the most common replacements that we see in the clinic, I would say, are knee, hip, and shoulder. But there's also like finger replacements, like for CMC replacements. So for a lot of people that use their hands. But like I said, most common for me, I would say, is knee and hip,
Mhm.
and
And
then
shoulder.
shoulder.
Yeah.
So, we just wanted to mention really quick because not a lot of people know that you can do prehab. So, this is rehab before your surgery. So, if you guys are out there and you are going to get a replacement, ask your doctor about sending you to physical therapy before your surgery.
And when she says ask,
Yes.
like just get a script.
Yeah, if you
Like,
need it. If you have Medicare, you don't even need a referral. Just literally walk into a PT office and they can do like right away, they can do an evaluation. You don't need a referral. They'll just send the plan of care to your doctor. So just go to physical
and
therapy.
also, I think some other insurances, there's a lot of differences with insurances.
Yes, but usually people that are getting replacements are probably on Medicare, I'm guessing. But I'm some of them younger, probably not. But
Yeah,
what
that's
physical
true.
therapy would do is they would improve your overall fitness. So, like we talked about, just having more fat percentage on your body is going to put more stress on those joints. So, honestly, just improving your overall fitness is going to help an immense amount. It also helps with recovery. So, I've had some patients that are told by their surgeon, you need to lose 30 pounds before your surgery. And that's just how it is. They will tell them flat out. They're not going to
Yeah,
sugarcoat it because it's
I
like,
don't.
that's what needs to happen, or else you're not going to be a good candidate for surgery. And there's much higher risks for you if you're in that like obese category. So that's just what it is. You're going to have to improve your cardiovascular fitness, overall fitness. We can increase muscle strength. So research shows that if you are stronger going into surgery, you're going to have a smoother, faster recovery after surgery, which is amazing because as a lot of people know, everybody always complains, especially about knees. Hips, I feel like people bounce back really quick. Knees, not so much.
No, it
That's like
is a
the dreaded physical
Whew.
therapy, like
Yeah.
post knee
They don't warn
replacement.
people enough about knee
Yeah,
replacements.
I know. And like the surgeons don't.
Yeah.
I think more now they do, at least some of the ones I've been working with, and people expect that it's going to hurt and it's going to take a lot of work. But prior, I feel like people just thought, okay, I'm just going to have surgery. It's going to fix all my problems. But the work starts on day one of PT. And it's
Yeah.
those first 2-3 weeks are brutal. Like, honestly, seeing patients go through it, I'm like, I would
Yeah, it
never want to get a
sucks.
knee replacement. Yeah.
It's just, yeah. And it's like, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Like I tell my patients, like, I'm
No.
sorry, it is going to hurt. Like, this is not going to be easy and it's going to
Yes.
hurt, but we need to get that motion because that is the first step
Exactly. And if you
into
don't get the
recovery.
motion early on, you're going to have scar tissue and it's going to be like 10 times harder to do later on.
Once that incision closes up, we are ready to go.
Yes. So I was going to say that, just a heads up, the only time that I've ever had people cry in physical therapy was after a knee replacement.
Yeah.
I've seen grown men cry, grown women cry. I've seen everyone cry, like not sob, but like definitely shed a few tears because it is hard.
It's
Like you
rough.
have to push yourself. And if you're not going to push yourself, don't worry, your PT will.
We will.
We're not afraid to do it. But, anyways, what did I want to say? Longevity. So, this is a big thing that people don't know, like how long knees and hips last. So, I always thought that,
Good
you
one.
have the surgery and then it's like, okay, good to go. You never have to think about it again. Like, go on your merry way before
Yes.
PT school. But this is more incentive for you to delay those replacements later on in life. Yeah, there was a study that was published in the Lancet journal in 2017. So, relatively recent. And they just did basically a survey of 60,000 people. That is a big number. So, it's a good group, like a,
Sample
oh my God,
size.
sample size. Yeah,
Yeah.
we are like struggling with words today. It's Sunday, late on a Sunday. Sample size. Thank you. So, 60,000 is a ton. And so, the 60,000 people that underwent a hip replacement, and basically, only 4.4% of those people needed a revision at the 10-year mark. And then at the 20-year mark, 15% of people needed a revision. So it went up by over 10% in those extra 10 years. So if you're 50 years old, you're likely going to live to 70, but you're probably going to need another revision or a replacement if you get it early on in life. So that's more of an incentive for you to kind of stay healthy and hopefully wait and delay surgery as much as possible.
And quick tidbit, the older you are, also, the harder recovery is.
Yes, because your muscles are weaker and sarcopenia is a real thing. So it's like, yeah, you don't want to be too old, but you don't want to be like in your 50s, I would say, like getting the replacement, because then you're just going to have to go and do surgery again. So it's like,
Yeah.
what is the sweet spot? But I've seen people get replacements in their late 80s and they
I've
end up
seen a
doing
90-year-old.
okay. Yep.
Yeah.
And
And
I'm like,
then,
this is going to last them a few years,
yeah.
but like, you know what? If they're really, really determined to get it, it's like nothing's really going to stop them. And the surgeon's going to do it as
Yeah.
long as it's safe and it's healthy, or they're healthy enough to do it. But for the knees, just other statistics for knee replacements, there was 55,000 people that underwent the knee replacement, and about 3.9% needed a revision at 10 years. And then at 20 years, that number went up to 10%. So not as much as the hips, which is surprising actually. But
Yeah.
like I said, it still goes up a lot at that 20-year mark. I think it's safe to say now, with like the parts being a little bit better and just having more information about all of that, I typically tell my patients that you can expect them to last about like 15 to 20 years is what I say if they ask. But it really depends on the person. It depends on the surgeon. It depends what kind of hardware they use. So lots of factors go into it, and like what crazy things you're doing in your day-to-day life. So
True. There's a lot of factors that go into if you're going to be a good candidate or not, too. And like how your recovery is going to be after.
yes. You know what was interesting though? So this is what I was saying. So there was a statistic that said that men that got was it a knee replacement? Yeah, or they just said operation. So 35% of men that were in their early 50s that underwent like a hip or a knee replacement ended up needing a revision, because you're likely going
Dang.
to live to your 70s. So
Yeah.
like it is likely that you're going to need a revision if you're getting those operations early on. But I was going to ask you, have you seen anybody in their 50s get a knee replacement or a hip replacement?
Yeah, I have. The one I had that had a hip replacement, he did actually prehab with me, and his like post surgery recovery was so good. And he was like, the doctor was so impressed at like my muscle. And I was like, yeah.
Yes, I
But
know.
they were, I think, pretty progressed. I'm not sure what stage they were at, but they were already coming to the clinic when I got there. It was pretty progressed. And like his job was very active and like
Yes.
whatnot. So
More
he was like,
physical
I'm just,
labor.
yeah. Yeah, knee though, I don't think I've seen a straight up knee replacement at 50 years old. Honestly, I have had so many patients that have said the doctor wanted to do a knee replacement and I said no. And I'm like, good for you, because clearly you can
Advocate
live
for
with
yourself.
it and
Yeah,
advocate for yourself, and you're probably just weak in your hips, so, like, let's work on that. Like,
exactly. Like,
there's
let's
so many
try
things
all the
and your
conservative
quads, like,
treatments first.
all the things. I've literally had people come in also that said, like, "Oh, the doctor wanted to do surgery, but, like, referred to PT and then wanted to do PT at PT." And when you target specific muscle groups to help with the neuromuscular control of your body movements, joints, like, that can do so much, so many wonders on your body. And, like, I've literally had people that, like, feel minimal to no pain, whereas they came in, like, in a lot of pain and they had arthritis. Like, there's just, yeah, you don't always need a replacement. In terms of treatments, it's really replacement or exercise. It all depends on your progression, how much pain levels and whatnot. But X-ray does not determine everything.
Yes. If you take one thing from this podcast, the x-ray and just imaging in general, MRIs, anything, that does not correlate to the symptoms that the patient experiences. And we don't need to put as much of a reliance on imaging. So just remember that. If you go in and you're like not having significant back pain, and then you go in and in the MRI, it says you have a massive like disc herniation, don't let those words terrify you, right? Like it sounds really scary, but don't put as much emphasis on the imaging, right? So if you take
Yeah.
one thing from this.
Okay, well, we have talked a lot and there's so much more that we want to talk about. So we decided that we're going to do a part 1 and 2. So this is part 1, and then part 2 we are going to talk all about injections, stem cells, collagen, and some other interesting topics related to arthritis.
Yeah. We have one question really quick that we wanted to address because it's like more of a
Okay.
fun one. But
Yeah.
everybody always says, can cracking your knuckles cause arthritis? The quick and dirty answer is no.
No.
Basically, what happens is when you're cracking your knuckles, you're stretching like the joint capsule, and that causes the little like nitrogen gas bubbles that are in your synovial fluid to pop. But they've done studies, they've debunked that myth 1,000 times, but people still believe that it can cause arthritis, and it can't. So if you want, keep cracking those knuckles. We don't really care, but it's not going to cause arthritis.
No. I mean, if you think about it, like cracking your knuckles, cracking any joint, what? Like chiropractic would be out of business if that was the case. Like if that caused arthritis. Like it doesn't even make
Exactly.
sense.
Yeah.
But there's no harm in cracking your joints as long as it's not painful.
Yeah. As long as you're
God bless
not like cracking
anything.
it to the point where, yeah, you're like stretching the tendon or ripping something,
Yeah, or
but
dislocating, but
it doesn't mean you can't do other things. But in the joint itself, you're not going to cause arthritis in
yeah.
your knuckles. But that is it for today, guys. I know this is a lot of information, but this is like a hot topic and it's so common in everyone. Thank you guys for listening. We hope that you guys learned something new today and appreciate your continued support always. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Physio Diaries podcast. Stay tuned for future episodes because we have a lot of exciting plans for guests to come on our podcast. Don't forget to rate us after listening. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.